My parents tried to sell my home for my brother's wedding. I took control, fought back, and reclaimed my life. I, 35F, recently bought my first home, marking a major life milestone. After years of diligent work and careful budgeting, I was finally able to afford a cozy place of my own. It's hardly a mansion, but it's ideal for me, a quiet retreat in a nice area. It felt great to have a property that was really mine, a result of all my preparation and hard work. My parents, bless them, were ecstatic when I told them. They immediately offered to help with some small renovations, which I found to be quite amazing. They maintained that it was how they celebrated this new phase of my life and wanted to offer support. I nodded, picturing nothing significant, perhaps some new paint here, some landscaping there. However, my folks, well, they went overboard. Their beneficial visit soon turned into a regular event. They always brought a new visitor, whether it was an old woman from down the street, an acquaintance, or a distant relative. My house seemed to have become the local tourist destination. I dismissed it, but I thought it was a little over the top. They had great pride in me, especially since my younger brother, Michael, 32M, was always the golden child. They also enjoyed showing off family accomplishments. Even though he is 3 years younger than me, Michael has always drawn the most attention. He got everything he desired as a child. If he wanted a gaming system, they would get him the deluxe edition. He used all of their credit cards to buy expensive clothing. My brother was always given preference, even though I adore him. Michael recently became engaged to his fiancée, who lacks the royal income but has comparable upscale tastes. I barely listened to my parents as they talked about how the wedding costs were rapidly getting out of hand. It made sense that they were determined to make his day one to remember. Then, strange things began to occur. All of a sudden, my folks started asking me about my house's worth, my outstanding mortgage, and if I had ever thought about refinancing. It seemed odd, but I didn't give it much thought. I assumed they were just interested because they had never before expressed interest in my financial situation. A week later, they invited me to join them for dinner and requested that I bring my property and mortgage documentation. Even though it seemed completely useless, likely due to security concerns, I consented because I didn't want to cause any trouble. I should have been more suspicious. Looking back, at this point, I began to hear strange remarks from my neighbors. They'd mentioned in passing that they saw a picture of a house just like mine online. Puzzled, I brushed it off as a coincidence. Then, I received an email from a friend that included a link to a real estate listing. It had pictures of the inside of my house. The pictures were taken during the remodeling projects my parents had been working on. I didn't know how or why my house was up for sale. My blood froze. Equipped with indisputable proof, the real estate listing with images taken within my home, I went up against my parents. They had to stop playing dumb. They initially attempted to minimize it by saying they were only looking into possibilities, in case I ever made the decision to sell. I didn't believe it. I wanted a direct response. Why would they list my house without contacting me? The truth was revealed at last. In order to assist in paying for Michael's ideal wedding, my parents acknowledged listing the house. They said it was all for family happiness, and that since I had fulfilled my dream of homeownership, Michael should also be able to fulfill his. They talked constantly about how my house's equity could enable him to have the wedding of his dreams and how he deserved it. My parents genuinely believed they had a voice in how my house may be used just because they had assisted with certain upgrades. It was astounding how entitled they were. I was quite clear that my house was not for sale and that Michael's extravagant wedding was definitely not being funded by a bank. They wouldn't let it go, though. They used every tactic in the book, including emotional blackmail, guilt trips, and even bringing up past actions they had taken for me. They accused me of prioritizing money over family, and recalled how much they had given me as a child. They saw my refusal to sell the house as a rejection of both Michael's happiness and the family as a whole. I remained steadfast. I restated that the house was not for sale and that they had gone too far. Then Michael himself gave the call. He was crying, upset, and angry as he called me selfish and accused me of spoiling his wedding. He claimed that, given everything the family had done for me over the years, I had no right to pass up this one thing for him. Even as it hurt, I persisted. I clarified that I didn't need to sell my home in order to finance his ideal wedding. I told a few close pals about the entire affair. Even though I was astonished, they helped me right away and told me that I had every right to defend my home. They encouraged me to stand my position and reminded me that my family's behavior was very inappropriate. Word got around the family fast, and opinions differed. Some family members sympathized with me and thought it was ridiculous that my parents had listed my house without my consent. Others, on the other hand, supported my parents and said that in order to maintain family unity, I should make concessions. I felt like I had suddenly turned into the antagonist in this twisted story because I refused to give up my house for a wedding. My parents gave me an ultimatum a few days later. I had to sell the house willingly or face the condemnation of the entire family. They were very explicit that if I didn't comply, I would be effectively disowned. It was strange to hear my own parents discuss such a tough decision for a wedding that, in reality, had nothing to do with me. My fiancé, Thomas, 37M, has been my pillar of support during this entire ordeal. He has always understood me in a way that my family has never been able to, and we have been together for a number of years. He was incensed on my behalf when I told him all that was going on, but he also gave me some clarity on what I needed to do next. In contrast to Michael's extravagant wedding, we had been planning our own, but we wanted a small, private ceremony. My grandfather, William, 77M, is one individual who has supported me over this entire ordeal. He has consistently criticized my parents for their partiality, and has never been a big fan of Michael. We have a unique bond. He claims that I make him think of his late wife, my grandma. Naturally, Michael tries to argue that Mom loves him more, but I don't often see him because he lives across the nation. He really is a pampered brat. When Michael received his football scholarship years ago, I learned that my parents had actually provided him with the funds to purchase a car and a house. They never gave me any money for my schooling. They said my college fund had been used for post-fire bills at Michael's university when I questioned them about it. Michael lived in luxury while I had to work through college and take out student loans. That's when I understood I needed legal advice. I called a lawyer and gave them the full rundown. The lawyer suggested a few safety measures. Even though it would be illegal for my family to sell my house without my consent, I should make sure that no locks would let anyone enter without my consent in the event that my parents attempted additional intervention. They also advised protecting any valuables and private papers. I changed the locks and secured my documents right away, as they had advised. However, my parents didn't stop there. They began venting their frustrations on social media shortly after our altercation. In their lengthy, theatrical posts, they claimed that I had turned my back on the family, and was egotistically holding on to money that could help my brother realize his ambitions. They painted me as some cold-blooded villain, which led to a barrage of remarks from close friends and distant relatives, the majority of whom were unaware of the full context. Thomas provided the most surprising assistance. We have been covertly organizing our own wedding in spite of the mayhem. We desire something little but significant, surrounded by those who genuinely care about us. Thomas said that until everything is set up, we might not want to inform my family. They might attempt to ruin it or make it into another Michael drama, considering their history. I'm caught between wanting to protect myself and my future and loving my family. As I write this, I won't allow the house to be taken away for someone else's ostentatious wants because it symbolizes everything I've worked for. However, the ongoing stress and emotional blackmail are wearing me down. I realize I'm correct, but there are moments when it seems like the hardest thing in the world to defend oneself against family. My grandfather and I are meeting tomorrow to talk about our wedding arrangements. He is the one person in my family whom I really trust, and I am very grateful for his support. Whatever my folks throw at me next, I only hope I'll have the fortitude to maintain my position. First update. 3 weeks have passed since my last post, so I need to give you an update on my life. My family's position has gotten worse in expected ways. My parents eventually took down my house's real estate listing after I sent a cease and desist letter via my attorney, but their response was anything but contrite. They accused me of legal harassment and called the letter a betrayal. Refusing to back down, they asserted that needless family conflict was being caused by my selfish refusal to assist with Michael's wedding. That letter turned out to be the decisive factor that caused us to drift further apart. My mother bemoaned how I had turned against them, saddened that I would put money above love. But instead of accepting responsibility, they stepped up their social media campaign, posting dramatic updates that portrayed me as the monster driving the family apart over just money. The posts were sufficiently ambiguous to deceive anyone unaware of the true circumstances. Family, friends, and distant relatives soon started praising them in their comments. Some even sent me direct messages that were full of scorn and criticism. Michael made the decision to confront me directly just when I felt things couldn't get much worse. He arrived at my house without warning, furious. He claimed that I had no right to keep my house to myself when the family required it for something as significant as his wedding, adding that it had always been family property, and that I was jealous of his happiness. Refusing to fall for the plot, I remained composed and restated my determination to keep the house. I bought it with my own hard-earned money, thus it was legally mine. He walked off, apparently much more enraged by that. The following day, my parents called with more expectations. They insisted that I grant them a sizable loan since I wasn't prepared to sell the house. As a family, they contended that I owed it to them in whatever way I could because Michael's wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Remaining calm, I declined. They had nothing to do with me, and their demands were totally inappropriate. In reaction, they severed all communication with me. They stopped asking me to family get-togethers, and I soon started getting complaints from other family members that I had alienated them. It was obvious that my parents were attempting to keep me apart in the hopes that I would give in to their pressure. Although I am deeply saddened, my close friends have supported me. They never stop telling me that I'm doing the right thing, and I don't know how I would have remained resolute without their help. The real estate agent who had previously come to my house called me a few days earlier. I couldn't get rid of the sensation that this wasn't over, even though they acknowledged that my parents had finally removed the listing after receiving the cease and desist letter. One evening at home, I observed that my locks seemed different, which confirmed my fears. I could tell they were tampered with, although it was subtle. At first, I thought someone had broken in, maybe as a reprisal for the legal letter. I hired a locksmith right away to replace all of the locks. I couldn't take any chances after everything that had transpired. I didn't want to think that my own family could be this bad, but I'm beginning to notice everything. I've begun therapy in order to get through the emotional turmoil this familial betrayal has left behind. I uncover layers of manipulation and shame in each session that I was unaware were hurting me. I'm learning from the therapist how deeply embedded these family relationships are and how crucial it is to set limits, even inside the family. In private, Thomas and I have proceeded with our wedding preparations. Having at least one family member who genuinely supports us is great, and my grandfather William is helping us organize everything. We're organizing something little but significant, exactly what we both desire. There is no greater difference between Michael's extravagant approach and ours. Observing my parents continuing their slander campaign within the extended family has been the most difficult aspect of all of this. They are creating a story in which I am the egotistical daughter who cares more about money than keeping the family together. As soon as the word got out, I started getting letters from relatives I hadn't seen in years, all of whom were disappointed and accused me of ruining family unity. I've begun recording every conversation I have with Michael, my parents, and any other family members who get in touch. I want a detailed record of everything said and done in case the situation erupts again. I also feel more in control of the issue when I keep a record, as if I'm finally taking proactive measures to adequately protect myself. I'm discovering that my resolve is getting stronger despite the pandemonium. Every story they circulate, and every attempt to guilt-trip me simply serves to reinforce the fact that I made the right choice. I will not allow anyone to ruin the life I have meticulously crafted for myself, not even my family. I'll provide another update as soon as I have more information to give, but Thomas and I are proceeding with our preparations. Your support matters more than you can imagine, so thank you all. Second update. Since my last update, which was months ago, everything has changed. Yes, I married Thomas last weekend without telling Michael or my parents. I must tell you what transpired. Just our closest friends, Thomas's family, and my grandfather William, who proudly escorted me down the aisle, attended our lovely small ceremony. He was so happy for us that he was glowing. When others asked me where my parents were, I just said they had to go to Michael's game. Grandfather was apprehensive about our concealment at first, but he was totally on board with us. A storm was building as we got back from our short honeymoon, totally disconnected. Before I could even unlock my phone, I was inundated with notifications, primarily from Michael and my mother. Michael was calling me names and using profanity. It seems that my aunt made a crude jab at my parents' absence by sharing wedding photos on Facebook. Everyone in their little community started denouncing them for how they had treated me when the post went public. As it happens, my grandfather even visited my parents and expressed his thoughts to them. This appears to have been the last straw for my dad. He ultimately confronted my mother and threatened to file for divorce if she didn't make amends because he was so angry about missing my wedding and his own father's criticism. My parents' texts first expressed wrath before changing to begging and pleading. I'm getting a lot of flack from my mom's sisters and friends since I didn't say it was my wedding. Many of my family members, including those I didn't invite, have expressed regret, claiming they were unaware of the dire circumstances at home. To be honest, though, I don't believe it. I did disclose my impending marriage to my parents. I gave them an invitation on paper just like everyone else. A few members on Thomas's side, my parents, Michael, and a few distant relatives did not send out RSVPs. I followed up with everyone else, and they all replied. Those who did not RSVP said they were unable to attend. My brother and mother ignored me when I texted them. I deliberately didn't give the precise day because I knew about Michael's game. They would tell me to quit being a bother, and that other things were more important each time I attempted to bring up the wedding. In retrospect, I guess I should have quit right away. The effort was not worth it. I didn't hide my marriage. I just didn't point it out to them in the hopes that they would be taken aback and perhaps even a little interested. My aunts and uncles did hear me mention the wedding. Sometimes Mom would even be in the room. "That's nice, dear," she would remark with a smile before straying from the subject. I attempted to keep my distance from them after high school, college, and graduate school, but they would always guilt-trip me and bring me back by pointing to my mom's sisters and grandparents. Maybe it's because Thomas is with me now that this time feels different. I am stronger and more self-assured, but I still need to make a decision. It has been quite hectic. The majority of Dad's family lives on the other side of the nation. As I already stated, I wasn't really sure how they felt about me. For a very long time, I stayed in contact with Dad's side of the family, but I never brought up the abuse again. I tried to let them know how my parents were treating me when I was 14 years old. My grandfather, uncles, and aunts all scolded them. However, I was chastised so badly when I went home that I convinced myself that I had made it up. The only person who knew was Grandfather. He was constantly worried that I would get resentful of him if he attempted to intervene. The fact that I currently reside in a different town than my parents should be noted. In fact, they hardly even know my current address. Michael once attempted to break into my old flat in order to steal money. In fact, my mother defended him by stating, "Siblings share things." Since then, I've moved. Their little settlement was about an hour away from the city where I used to reside. In relation to my cousin, it was she who brought up the fact that my dad's absence at my wedding was a major issue for him. They chastised my cousin for turning her back on family over a minor incident, and eventually cut her off. I sent my dad a message expressing my desire to meet with him, my mother, and Michael at a neutral location the next day. He immediately replied that he agreed. My dad's brother and sisters are joining us in a park where we're congregating, probably to prevent any harm. My dad looked awful, as he has been for days. For the time being, I'm concentrating on enjoying my new life with Thomas, even though I know I'll need to make some decisions regarding my connection with my family in the future. We are eager to start a new chapter in our lives together, free from the manipulation and turmoil that have characterized my past. Third update. My last update was 1 month ago. Although nobody anticipated it, the park encounter I mentioned ended up being a pivotal moment. I'm at last prepared to talk about what transpired and how I finally took charge of my life. When I got to the park, I could feel the tension. Michael was unable to keep eye contact. My mother was wearing her typical self-righteous expression, and my father looked defeated. I had my own intentions, but my dad's siblings were there, ostensibly as mediators. My lawyer was on rapid dial. A folder of documented proof and an unshakable resolve to put an end to this on my terms were the 3 things I carried with me. I put a heavy folder on the park bench between us before anyone could say anything. This is every text, email, social media post, and court document demonstrating your attempts to steal my house, I said, opening the folder. Evidence of financial fraud is also included. I gave my mom my full attention. Do you recall those college fund records you said were destroyed in a fire? Copies were kept by grandfather. It's interesting how that money ended up in Michael's accounts. My mother's face lost its color. Michael began to object, but I interrupted him. I'm not done yet. I also have surveillance footage and other records of your attempted break-in at my previous flat, not to mention that my house locks have recently been tampered with. I raised my hand when my father attempted to apologize. I came here not to apologize. I came to explain to you exactly what will occur next. I produced a paper that included compound interest calculations and a list of all the items they had taken from my college fund. You may either give back all of the money you took from my education fund and handed it to Michael, plus interest, or I'll file charges for financial fraud. My attorney has everything prepared. In an attempt to keep things under control, my mother sneered. You wouldn't risk it. We are related. I chuckled. When you attempted to take my house, you forfeited your ability to refer to us as family. But let me go on. Also, I'm requesting a restraining order against each and every one of you. There is strong evidence of emotional abuse, harassment, and break-in attempts. At last, Michael was able to speak. This cannot be done to us. How about my wedding? I said. All right, Michael. Let me tell you about weddings. I was recording every threat, every deceptive message, and every attempt to steal my stuff while you were organizing your lavish celebration. This issue is especially intriguing to the law firm I hired, which focuses on family financial abuse. I turned to my parents. Additionally, the firm found several intriguing anomalies in your financial data. The IRS appears to be quite interested in certain tax-related matters, particularly those involving gifts to Michael that were not properly disclosed. There was silence in the park. Even the noises of kids playing in the distance sounded subdued. My mom's face had turned ashen instead of pale. It appeared as though my father was ill. This is what's going to happen, I added in a calm, steady voice. Within 72 hours, you will credit my account with the entire sum of my pilfered college fund, plus interest. You will stop communicating with my husband, myself, and my close friends and family. You'll take down every social media post that mentions me and refrain from creating any new ones. My attorney will file the restraining order, the fraud charges, and the IRS tip. If you break any of these conditions. I looked across at Michael. And you? The golden child role has ended for you. I have forwarded information about your attempted break-in and the threats that followed to the Human Resources Department of your employer. They were especially curious about how this relates to the ideals of their business. My mother's voice shook, but she managed to get it out. Would you ruin your own family for financial gain? No, I replied. Mother, after years of abuse and manipulation, you ruined this family. All I'm doing is making sure you can never harm me again and giving me back what you took. I got up and gathered my papers. You have 72 hours. My attorney will be keeping an eye on the move. Everything is filed. If it isn't finished, or if any of you try to get in touch with me. Additionally, keep in mind that grandfather has copies of all the original paperwork proving the financial fraud before you think about attempting to challenge this. My father yelled feebly. Lauren, please. As I was leaving, I made one final turnaround. You had 20 years to say please and 20 years to defend me. You were a father for 20 years. The time is up. The repercussions, the result, was just what I had envisioned. The entire sum showed up in my account within 48 hours. All of my mother's social media posts regarding me were removed. Michael was placed on administrative leave by his employer while an internal inquiry was conducted. My grandfather told me that my father eventually filed for divorce. Not that we needed it anymore, but Thomas and I upgraded our home security system with some of the refunded funds. Additionally, we made a sizable donation to a charity organization that supports victims of financial abuse in families. Making their manipulation into something constructive for other people seemed right. According to my grandfather, who is the only member of my family I still communicate with, my parents' social standing in their little town has completely collapsed. It turns out that people's carefully constructed picture collapsed once they discovered the whole reality, which included years of financial abuse and manipulation in addition to my wedding. After the company's inquiry exposed Michael's level of dishonesty, his fiancée broke up with him. I won't pretend it doesn't hurt occasionally, but I know I made the right decision. Every morning when I wake up in my home, which is safe and secure and cannot be taken from me, Thomas and I are currently organizing a lavish honeymoon, which will be funded in part by my refunded education funds. Using their stolen money to increase my own happiness has a certain poetic quality. My accomplishments are currently displayed on a wall in my home office, including my professional certifications, degrees that I earned through hard work, and a framed copy of the final bank transfer that shows the refunded college funds. The money isn't the point. It's about saying, enough is enough, and ultimately taking a stand. I say this to anybody who could criticize me for being too severe, for not trying to make amends, or for not accepting apologies. Forgiveness is a gift, not a duty. Walking away and making sure toxic people can never harm you again is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. Despite their attempts to portray me as such, I am not the antagonist in this tale. My house belongs to me. I'm a woman who, at last, decided, no more. I own my life. I own my future. To pay for a wedding, they intended to steal my house. They actually lost a lot more than that. They lost their social standing and reputation, but more significantly, they lost any influence they may have had over me. I'm doing well, and so is Thomas. With friends who genuinely care about us, we have dinner parties in our safe, expensive house. Since everything started, I've gotten 3 promotions at work, in part because I'm not bearing the emotional weight of their manipulation any longer. Living a good life isn't always the best form of retaliation. Sometimes it's holding those who attempted to harm you accountable. My mom wanted to steer the conversation. Well, she no longer has a story to steer. Michael requested that everything be given to him. He's now learning what it means to deal with the fallout. The passive observer role was what my father desired. Being too helpless to stop it, he got to watch everything fall apart. I finished telling this narrative because I'm ready to move on to the next chapter, not because there isn't more to tell, one in which I write all the words and nobody else does. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me along the way. Keep in mind that forgiveness and reconciliation aren't always necessary for a happy ending. Sometimes you have to say, never again, and stand your ground. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Helping my brother leave his bride at the altar because she invited our estranged mother, a family drama unfolds with surprising twists. We are 34, 32, and 28, while his ex-fiancée is 30. Not in the US. I have 2 older brothers. This is about the middle one. Our parents split when I was quite young owing to our mother's irrational jealousy. My father was able to deal with it at first, but when she made comments about wanting me to be like his wife, he had had enough. She quickly reconnected with a man with 2 children and shared custody for a period, but when my father remarried, she went insane, calling his new wife every awful term and claiming he had cheated on her while they were married. I was always closer to my brothers and father than my mother, who was always harsh to me. Long story short, my stepmother died in a horrific car accident, and my father contacted her in the middle of the night to tell her he would pick us up earlier so we could attend the burial. She chose to take us on a nice trip instead to commemorate something. It was the happiest we had ever seen her, and when we understood what had happened and began crying, she informed us that only useless people cry for prostitutes. Needless to say, things escalated, and my father requested full custody with visitation privileges for her. He always kept the lines of communication open and paid for us to see her after she moved away, but it was still really unpleasant. We began reducing contact with her as soon as we turned 18. We last saw her at my high school graduation, where she made it a point to tell everyone that we were ungrateful kids, and her husband also called us names. We have remained no contact (NC) since then. My brother Sam began dating his ex 3 years ago. She had heard all of the stories and reasons we were NC, but she thought we were being theatrical. They had many disagreements because of her ideas, but she ultimately appeared to abandon their "You need to reconcile with your mother" crusade. Throughout the wedding preparation process, there was no sign that anything was incorrect or suspicious. Then, on the wedding day, we arrived at the church and saw our mother, her husband, and 2 children sitting in the front row. I instantly panicked and contacted my brothers. Sam suspected she had found out and wanted to crash the wedding, so he called his ex to tell her of the potential turmoil. She assured him that everything was fine because she had invited them. Sam hung up and asked me to go fetch him while our older brother handled things at the church. We went home and barricaded ourselves, even while his ex, her family, friends, and others attempted to reason with him. Mom's spouse even called to say he had always known we were useless. Now that the dust has settled, the majority of Sam's friends and family support him. Our father's ex-in-laws have already threatened to sue for the money they paid for the wedding if Sam does not marry her, but Sam says he would rather repay them than marry someone who has betrayed him. Our nuclear family wholeheartedly supports Sam, but the blowback has been massive. Edit, you just reassured us all, so thank you. Some have asked, and no, she hasn't apologized. She also texted my oldest brother, Joe, saying she felt inviting our mother would be a nice wedding gift for Sam because she values family. My father purchased them a house as a wedding present, but only Sam is on the paperwork. She had keys for when they moved in, but we only got the locks changed today. Joe and other cousins are relocating Sam's belongings from her apartment this week. We aren't concerned about being sued, but we will consult a lawyer just in case. We also learned that Mom and her family are still in town, but because we're all staying at our childhood home for a few days, we don't mind. My father is saddened that Sam is heartbroken, but he is doing his best to cheer him up along with my boyfriend and sister-in-law. I had to deactivate my social media accounts because I was receiving abusive remarks and messages, but the more people hear about why Sam fled, the fewer messages I receive. I am still sorry that she was humiliated, but my brother comes first. Edit 2. I questioned Joe about the aftermath at the church, and it was precisely what I imagined. He claims he stood up in front of everyone and informed them Sam wasn't coming and that they should go home. All presents delivered to our side of the family will be promptly returned. The ex was still outside the church when some from her family notified her, and she began yelling and wailing, constantly contacting Sam. Mom tried to speak with Joe, but he didn't even glance at her. When she couldn't obtain a reaction from him, she burst into tears, lamenting how cruel we are to her. Some people began to console her, as is customary for her, but Joe and his wife were unconcerned. When they left the church, the ex was waiting for them and demanded to see Sam. Joe resisted, telling her no. Then she wanted to know what to do about the party, to which Joe said that if she didn't want the venue, he would arrange for the food to be distributed to the workers so that it didn't go to waste. Everyone was shouting except Joe, who kept calm since he didn't want to satisfy Mom. Joe and my sister-in-law returned home after stopping at the store and various fast food restaurants, and we've been inside the house like kids again, with a few more members. When we asked Sam if he wanted them to leave, he insisted on staying. We had all planned to spend time with our families following the wedding, so it was not an issue. When the ex arrived at the gate, we understood she was not going to use the venue, so my sister-in-law called the venue with Sam's information and asked them to give the food. She also sent some advice for their problems. It appears that we will receive all of the alcohol that my father paid for, so we will be pretty drunk by the end of the year. A few people messaged me, asking why our father ever married our mother. The answer is simple: he adored her and felt she was the nicest person imaginable. It turned out she wasn't, but she knew no one else, except possibly her unpleasant husband, would marry her unless she seemed to be kind. Dad even considered staying with her until we were grown-ups, but her condition worsened. She used to be really sweet, and he thought she was changing, but she would then revert back. As for my ex-sister-in-law, we have no doubt she feels our mother is a nice person with ungrateful children since she can be incredibly charming. Some individuals find it amusing to make fun of others as long as it is not directed at them, but this does not excuse what she did. Sam's only explanation. Sam's only explanation was to his boss, who attended the wedding. His boss was quite kind and surprised by what our mother put us through, given how well-adjusted and happy we appear. Our father stated it was a shock for all of us, and he told Sam to stay home for as long as he needed. Sam is returning home for the time being. I showed the post to my family, who were affected by your thoughtfulness. Sam wants you to know that his ex-fiancée did not exhibit any alarming behaviors, and he honestly believed she understood his upbringing. He agreed to meet with her and her parents today, but only if it was at our house, where we could support him. It will be an interesting visit. Update: Sam lost some money, but it will not affect him. Her parents paid for her outfit, a very beautiful cake, and a portion of the honeymoon. His ex wasn't the most popular in-law, but we believe she adored Sam. We don't have any touch with Mom's side. Joe used to communicate with our grandmother, but after his wedding, another disaster, he cut her off too. Mom's statements about me wanting to be the wife stemmed from her idea that we shouldn't have daddy-daughter days. However, there were also Daddy Joe and Daddy Sam days. Dad constantly attempted to spend time with us both individually and as a group. She's just unwell. We don't advertise our childhood, so when others inquire about our parents, the typical response is, "It's just my dad," or, "It's just my siblings and my dad." Most people assume Mom is deceased, avoiding the unpleasant question about why we don't speak to her. Mom's stepchildren are both male and in their early 30s. Our father now has a long-term girlfriend, and we really enjoy her. She's been doing her own thing over the last 3 days, but she says we have her full support. The update: I was curious why Sam agreed to the meeting after not speaking with her, but it turns out she sent videos and images of all his possessions on the floor to his best buddy, Tom, and threatened to burn or destroy everything unless Sam spoke with her. Tom went to see Sam and told him what had transpired. They advised her that they needed entry to the flat before anything could happen. Tom, Joe, a few cousins, and my boyfriend went over to pack Sam's clothes, devices, and crucial documentation. Sam joked that they were the fastest moving staff he'd ever witnessed. The meeting, for lack of a better term, was absurd. She arrived with her parents and sisters and attempted to speak to Sam alone, but when he refused, she simply began chatting. Not once did she apologize. She stated it was not her fault that we don't appreciate the value of a true family, and were trained to despise mothers. She stated that her main purpose was to teach Sam to value mothers because she was terrified he would take her children from her, as he had been taught to do. Sam said nothing until she called our family a cult and humiliated our father. As you might expect, this is a sore subject for all of us, and we won't let anyone insult our father. Sam went off on her, calling her a disgusting liar, stating he was horrified that he had ever held her hand, and thanking the world that I am always early to everything. He informed her that sticking with a dishonest husband like her mother did is not anything to be proud of. He claimed she had merely pretended to be kind so that he would marry her. He then detailed all of the small faults he had overlooked because he sincerely loved her, or at least who he believed she was. Sam stated that he would never forgive her for the suffering she caused him. Siblings, but he did not hate her because she did not deserve so much of his attention. He concluded by saying she had had enough time to straighten things up and that, because she acted like the victim, he would make sure everyone understood why he didn't attend the wedding. It was horrible, but it was therapeutic and important for Sam. Her parents said nothing but were clearly embarrassed. She cried, and her sisters attempted to defend her and their parents' relationship, expecting us to argue back, but we did not. Sam then told his ex-fiancée's father, Phil, that he could sue if he wanted, but that doing so would expose all of his family's dirty laundry to the world, which he doubted Phil would want to see. Amazingly, Phil continued to urge that Sam should try to make amends and marry his ex, since they're not getting any younger and all families fight. I have never rolled my eyes harder. The remainder of the meeting was spent on logistics, returning wedding gifts, ceasing harassment from their relatives, canceling the honeymoon, and changing the locks. Sam's ex was crying and attempting to talk to him, but Sam was all business and didn't want anything from her. He only answered directly when she mentioned keeping the engagement ring, even though no one had requested it. Later, when the booze arrived, our mother and her husband crept through the gate when it opened. She said she just wanted to talk to her baby boys. My father requested her to go, but she insisted that he had raised us incorrectly, and that we had embarrassed her with our actions. She couldn't believe we were such bad people and suggested we make amends with her because we clearly lacked maternal love. She got it right, and the outcome was pathetic. Joe walked outside and ordered her to go since the cops were on their way. She took advantage of the chance to cry because it was Joe's first conversation with her in roughly 10 years. She tried to persuade him to join her and her husband for dinner, but Joe simply urged her to go, and stated that the only thing he wanted to hear about her was when her burial was so he could rejoice. Mom cried hysterically while her husband screamed, demanding an explanation and even threatening to strike Joe. My father and Joe went back inside and left them at the gate until we noticed they had finally left. Then we closed the gate. Some people struggle to comprehend why we behave the way we do, yet what I've said about our mother is only the tip of the iceberg. Dad wasn't very proud of what Joe said, but he saw that Joe needed to express himself and was speaking on behalf of all of us. Maybe this makes us awful people, but we really don't want to see her again. We will all have family therapy sessions in addition to individual ones. Sam no longer wants the house, but Dad advises him to take things slowly, with the first step being to mend his heart. We've been watching horror movie marathons with a few Disney oldies thrown in, and we've even created a drama bingo game with all of the possible outcomes. I suppose we are dramatic after all. Love each other, and we were educated to treat others with respect, yet, when pushed, we can be petty. While I would never wish to be abandoned at the altar, I would do it again because I adore my brother more than I feel sorry for her. We'll go on a family trip someday, but for now, we'll just enjoy spending time together. To the individual who said Joe is a hero, his siblings could not have asked for a greater brother and friend. We have read all of your letters and would like to thank everyone for allowing us to vent, for the awards, and for their support. Sorry if my English isn't great. Joe and Sam are clearly fictitious names, but I hope you understand. Also, my brothers are reading your remarks and want you to know how much they appreciate your positive attitude. To anyone in a similar circumstance, know that things will get better. Update 2. Some clarifications. You're welcome to PM us, even if you are insulting us, but I will only answer publicly. To the individual who wrote me a harsh essay accusing Joe of being parentified, here is my response. My brothers spent time with me because they wanted to. We had special days together, and they did anything they pleased. They had a large circle of friends and traveled both with and without me. There were nannies, family members, and my father, so they were never obliged to bring me along. They enjoyed a great deal of freedom within reason. Our parents split when I was 3, and despite shared custody, we spent 90% of our time with Dad. We only went to see our mother in pairs. Joe and Sam only paid her visits once I turned 18, and I had to accompany them because they didn't want me alone. We've all been in therapy for a while, but now we're having extra sessions because we saw our mother again. Joe was the only one to interact with her. We also know how to defend ourselves. Joe confronted our mother on his own. We did not ask him to do so. Why didn't my dad accompany Joe to church? Because Sam begged our father to go home. We didn't think he needed to visit our mother again, even though he had to speak with her later. Sam has cried. He is not a monster. He is simply heartbroken. He believed he could spend the rest of his life with Daniela, that he was a good judge of character, and that he would never have to face our mother again. There are many emotions, but because of our upbringing, we've gotten quite skilled at controlling our feelings with people we don't trust or like. We learned this survival ability as a result of how we were treated. Joe had a relationship with our grandma, but he stopped communicating with her after she invited our mother to his wedding as her +1. The location did not host any religious ceremonies, and security had a no-entry list. Joe sent Grandma a note and never spoke with her again. We also did not attend her funeral. The wedding had roughly 250 attendees, and Daniela used different names on the seating chart, so we didn't know about the invitation. By the way, Daniela is not Brazilian, and my father wanted me to let you know that his children are not alcoholics. He's worried that people will believe we are, even though this is anonymous. Anyway, this week has been crazy. Those who advised being prepared for the pregnancy technique were right on. She announced online that she was pregnant, leading others to stress out and phoned Sam to see whether it was true. Sam called her and urged her to remove the post. But she kept insisting she was pregnant. He told her they needed to talk, so she erased the post and met up with him. This woman assumed he wanted her back. I accompanied Sam to meet her. She was joyful until she saw me enter the room, at which point she burst into tears and clutched her tummy. Sam questioned her whether she was truly pregnant, and she responded yes, claiming she did not want her child to grow up in a shattered home. Sam insisted on going to the doctor right away to confirm, and she cried even more, yelling that he didn't believe her. Long story short, she was not pregnant. However, following the encounter, she claimed online that Sam was pressuring her to have an abortion and that she was upset. As you may guess, this was terrible, and people were phoning Sam, unsure what to trust anymore. When my sister-in-law, Anna, learned about the posts, she called Daniela. I am not sure what was stated during that chat, but I have never seen Anna so upset. The posts were removed, but Anna sent an email to everyone on the wedding list explaining everything, including the fact that Daniela was never pregnant. This morning, we learned that Daniela had a breakdown and left voicemails for Sam, stating that if she couldn't be with him, she wanted to die. This is straight out of our mother's playbook, so Sam called the cops and reported what had occurred. Her family put her into therapy, and she is currently being monitored. None of this makes us happy, but we don't want to be involved anymore. We've already changed our phone numbers and requested new ones. Our mother even emailed Anna, threatening to sue her for defamation over the email campaign, but we aren't worried. Anna's parents are wonderful and fully back how she handled the situation. Joe was upset, but Anna persuaded him to let go and move forward. Mom's spouse has been charming as usual, and Dad is considering a restraining order, which isn't very effective where we live. We had a great time together at home yesterday. There was karaoke, dancing, delicious food and beverages, games, and even a bouncy house because why not? We adore them. Most people avoided discussing the wedding and the drama, but those who did so in an appropriate manner. Dad has already handed most of the alcohol he paid for as wedding gifts to his employees, allowing them to select one bottle each. He's also including bottles in his Christmas gift baskets this year. We are spending the holidays together and traveling. I told Sam about a new paint color for the house, but he simply does not want to live there anymore. He plans to rent it out. When I joked about eloping or not having a formal wedding to avoid turmoil, Joe told me unequivocally that if I chose to marry, I would have the largest party ever. He is still the finest. Thank you for all of your wonderful comments and messages, not the negative ones, awards, and interest in our situation. And to all the lovely Daniellas out there, sorry, but this is not about you. Holiday update. Thank you for your continued interest. It's always enjoyable to log in and keep you updated on the situation. First, a few points. Hello, finest subreddit in YouTube. You've become part of our family lore. I read every single comment and message. Some people commented that I lacked a feminine figure in my life. Although I had my grandmother, aunts, and others, Rita, my father's girlfriend, is not a mother figure, and I do not consider myself a bad woman because of it. When I got my period, my father had a complete plan in place. He told my brothers, and they each took their own method. It may sound awkward to me, but it was even more so for them. It's a funny story that makes me realize how much they care about me. Rita is great, and we adore her. She doesn't mind not being married to Dad, and he doesn't want to marry again, but if he did, we'd support him. Daniela's sisters attempted to stir up more trouble by accusing us of being nasty people, but after Anna's email, no one believed them. One of her sister's boyfriends even broke up with her because he didn't want to be associated with such a nasty family. I will not tell you where we live or what Dad does for a living, so please do not ask again. We have new phone numbers, social media identities, and are preparing a move. Joe and I also have some news. I keep a short note with fictitious names, and I type my posts in Word to prevent stumbling over my babbling. My father wants you all to know that your applications to the cult have been accepted. Anyway, I looked at the last update and couldn't believe it was only in early November. I mostly have positive news for you. Sam's doing great. He's taking time off work, and his supervisor is quite accommodating, telling him he may return when he's ready. He lives with Dad and has adequate savings, so he isn't concerned about money. He has taken up jogging and intends to compete in a marathon next year. Sam is gradually returning to his goofy self, and he is actively assisting Dad in renovating their home, primarily by painting rooms and creating murals. They are having a great time. Daniela wrote Sam a note, but he returned it. The house was listed as a rental, which Sam is fine with. Now for some more exciting news. I am engaged. It turns out that this has been planned for months, and when I joked about eloping, my future husband, Matt, panicked because he assumed I had worked out his plot. He had already spoken with Sam, who was aware of the proposition but did not want to make him uncomfortable, Joe, and my father. My father gave Matt a hard time when he asked for my hand, saying it was not his to give, but it was all in good fun. The proposal happened earlier this month, and I'm overjoyed, but not as much as my father, who insists on escorting me down the aisle, even if it's a civil wedding. While my news is fantastic, the other major announcement in the family is much better. Joe and Anna had been on the adoption list for a while, and a few weeks ago, they welcomed a baby girl. She is the most gorgeous, charming, and perfect baby ever. The adoption is final, as it usually is with infants in our nation. We knew they wanted to adopt, so when they told us the baby was finally theirs, there were many happy tears. Dad is in full grandpa mode, and despite some difficult circumstances this year, this is by far the nicest thing that has happened to our family. Unfortunately, our mother learned about the baby and requested to meet her. She has been served with our version of a restraining order, and we are determined to keep her from seeing the baby if at all possible. These are the negative news updates. Because of the new COVID version, we decided to stay at home for the holidays and hold a little Christmas celebration to welcome the baby and commemorate our engagement. Joe and his wife were unable to attend in person because the baby was too young, but they participated via Zoom. We also agreed to give Sam some stupid gifts, like Julia Roberts t-shirts and mugs, because, he's the family's runaway bride. Joe and I are considering moving because we currently live in flats and would like to reside in a house. We are still a little shaken up by everything, and we know we have some emotional work to do, but we're focused on the good because the bad is in the minority. Whatever happens, I'll always be grateful for my family. I suppose this will be the final update, people. I realize the previous few have been mainly drama-free and perhaps not as thrilling, but we're hoping for less drama in our lives. I have no plans to erase anything, so the account will remain active in case something important happens. I wish you all a fantastic end of year and an amazing 2022. 2022 catch-up. Hello, cult. I suppose it is time for a little update for those who are still interested. First, a few points. Yes, Spanish is our native tongue. Adoptions in our country are final and managed by the government, with open adoptions being rare. Joe and Anna have been wanting to have a family through adoption for quite some time. When I mentioned Hamas before, it was like when they announced the Pope, lol. We are now 35, 33, and 29. HB was supposed to stand for husband, but I adore how some of you understood it as huge bastard. Either works, honestly. Joe and I relocated as anticipated last year, and the year has been relatively uneventful. Daniela, on the other hand, surprised everyone by revealing that she is pregnant, and that Sam is the father. The strange thing is, Sam cannot be the father because he was not even in the country when the baby was conceived. She had no way of knowing. However, Sam has offered to perform a paternity test several times, but she refuses. Legally, Sam is fine, he just feels awful for her baby. Daniela's father even attempted to sue Sam for emotional distress on behalf of both of his daughters, Daniela and the one whose boyfriend departed, but nothing came of it, thanks to Joe, who is a lawyer. I promise that this information is related to this catch-up. Sam chose not to take any action against Daniela's father since he has too many responsibilities and feels sorry for the family. Our mother still insists on meeting the baby, but it will never happen. She used one of her favorite tactics, pretending she has cancer. She contacted Joe and Anna via their work emails, pleading with them to help her meet the baby since she is critically ill and may require a transplant. This is the 6th time she has claimed to have cancer, but the truth is that she has had it 0 times. She enjoys the attention, sorrow, and drama that evil individuals bring forth in others. We never believed her, of course, but we didn't expect her to make a spectacle of herself by contacting Anna's mother via Facebook. Anna's mother is a gorgeous, devout Catholic lady, so Mother may have felt she was simple to manipulate. Mother told her about the cancer and how heartbroken she was that she would not be able to meet the baby. Anna's mother asked a few questions concerning the diagnosis and therapy, which made no sense as predicted. She then blocked her and shared the screenshots on her wall. It's similar to high school drama but with more mature characters and witty comebacks. Other than that, the baby is absolutely happy and healthy. The only point of contention was what to call Rita, Dad's girlfriend. Our mother insisted Rita had no right to be called Grandma. Joe and Anna spoke with Rita, and they all agreed that, for all intents and purposes, she is Grandma. Rita and our mother can do nothing about it. Sam's doing great. He resigned from his job and embarked on his own venture. He is still living in the family home, renting out the second house, and is seeing someone. She's polite, knows about the drama, bakes beautiful cakes, and knows how to knit. We like her, so we're optimistic and cautious. They're taking things slowly, but it's great to see him with someone like this. He also continued to paint rooms with Dad, and the results are painfully comical and stupid, like something you'd see in kindergarten. Please keep in mind that I adore them. Dad attracted Co for the first time, and he became so afraid that he decided to rewrite his will. That's why Joe's profession is important. They wanted Sam and me to know about it after they were done. Everything Dad has is divided into 4 parts, 3 for his children, and the remaining quarter for any grandkids. However, the family home will not be divided and will soon be transferred into my name. I was perplexed, but Joe and Dad reviewed it and decided I could have it, but only if Sam agreed. He did, and he's pleased with it. They didn't provide many explanations other than that it was the correct thing to do. I believe it's partly because I'm the baby of the family, but that's fine. Joe acquired a house in the same neighborhood as our family home, so while we're not on the same block, we're close. Matt and I are no longer buying anything because I will be getting the house, which makes no sense. We relocated to the family home, which has been interesting yet enjoyable. Dad has started semi-retirement, and is spending more time at Rita's, which benefits everyone. Sam, of course, can stay as long as he likes, but his murals must go, lol. We're still engaged, happy, enjoying babysitting, and not pregnant, but we bought a kitten this spring. We're planning a wedding in December, and couldn't have asked for a nicer year-ending celebration. So that is it, no drama, or at least not much drama. We're making progress and healing at a steady pace, which is exactly what we want. In case you're wondering why I'm posting now, one of us is a big admirer of the best of Redditor updates, and reminded us of the posts. Anyway, hello from the cult, and we wish everyone a fantastic final few months of 2022. 2023 catch-up. Welcome to Reddit. First, as tradition dictates, we now have 2 cats. Sam moved in with his girlfriend, and we're so glad he's happy again. Dad has semi-moved in with Rita, which has been heartbreaking, but we remain cheerful and supportive of one another. Let us start with the negative news. It turns out that there was cancer on our mother's side, but not hers. One of her stepchildren got it and died earlier this year. She's milking it for all it's worth, and we're furious with her as always. While we sympathize with her loss, we will not change our no-contact policy with her and her entire family. Daniela had her kid, a very lovely boy who is clearly not Sam's. Not that we ever doubted it. She tried to get him to acknowledge the baby and sign some childhood bedroom, but so far, everything is going well for the cult. Sam received fewer Julia Roberts-themed gifts this year, but he proudly wears his t-shirts all year long. Finally, Sam's girlfriend has approached us about proposing to him when the time is perfect, so who knows? Maybe this time, he'll make it to the altar. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.